good afternoon, all professor, ladies and gentlemen, and all participants. I'm Assistant Professor Suthirat Kitipongwiset, the Director of Environment, Development and Sustainability International Program, Chulalongkorn University, and I am now the lecturer at the Environmental Research Institute, Chulalongkorn University. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to take this opportunity to give you a warm welcome for everyone to join our discussion on the aging society. As you may know that the aging population is one of the becoming challenges at the global society and affect in terms of the sustainability challenges in all dimensions. So for today's discussion, we are online discussion. We have to refer to the many organizations that contribute and make this event happen today. And I would like to thank for the contribution from the international program and also the organization that come here and maybe make for our discussion today happen, like the United Nations of the Population Fund, the British Embassy, the Embassy of the Republic of the Korea, the JH, and also the Tessia Healthcare from Singapore, and also the Department of the Older Person of Thailand, Digital Economy Promotion Agency, and the College of the Population Studies and Asian Study of Chulalongkorn University. So once again for coming today and for your kind contribution. For the next, I would like to ask maybe our Vice President, Professor Chakapan Suthirat, Vice President of the Research Affairs, Chulalongkorn University, for kindly give some kinds of the warm welcome and speech to everyone here. Please, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Suthirat. Good morning, distinguished panelists, scholars, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining together the online roundtable panel discussion on sustainable aging, challenges and ways forward in the 21st century. As we already know that many countries in the world are facing with challenges and impacts of the demographic change and becoming rapid of population aging. And also it should be realized that many countries will completely move to age societies within the next decade. In Thailand, the number of the elderly or people aged 60 or over is continuously growing. Regarding to the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, or EIA, in the year 2021, Thailand is now ranked the third most rapidly aging population in the world. The number of elderly in Thailand is about 13 million, accounting for approximately 20% of population. By the year 2050, the proportion of aging population is projected to increase from 13 to 20 million, or about 35 to 36% of the total population. Although many regions in Thailand are at increased risk of environmental change conditions, the loss of damage and natural disaster affects the most not only the economic growth, but also the social assets and human well-being. Although changing in climate, unstable of core necessity in infrastructure for communities health directly influences human health. The absence of considered infrastructure that need of elderly in climate-driven crisis harm more than comfortable usual lifestyles. It also limits basic access to food, health care, and other necessities of living. So does climate change minimize the chance of being sustainable aging, which not only directly increase elderly health risk, but also affects old age, social life. People who has limited to financials and don't have enough resources to move after the natural disasters will face with critically and disproportionately impact. However, how to live aging sustainability is simple, but yet difficult. However, it's a good time that we have to pull back and push forward for the better good. As we are here together, I do believe that with your expertise, we will find the answer to that question properly and beautifully. Finally, I would like to welcome you all again to the International Seminar on Sustainable Aging Challenges and Ways Forward in the 21st Century. Thank you once again for coming and joining our event. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you very much for the beautiful speech of welcoming and opening remarks from Assistant Professor Suthirat Kittipongviset and Professor Chakaphan Suthirat. Before we move to the big section, shall we have like the kind of attention to have a group photo? Could you please like face on and then we take the photo together. Therefore, Professor Chakaphan, could you please stop share the screen or like, oh no, I like, how can we make the
I think you should ask the host to do kind of the I don't know what it's called. It's like a list of all the
maybe print screen. Maybe
participants.
Khun Vivat, can you please profit for that?
Yes, I'm ready. Just let the participant open their camera.
So I think you can give us some kinds of the signal as the smile, something like that, so we can have some idea that we should
like,
stop smile.
Okay, we're gonna go to the photo session. I'm gonna give you the hint like 1, 2, 3, and then we do 2 shots. Okay.
I guess we should wait for all participants to open the camera before we proceed.
Okay, I seem like everybody almost on. Okay, I'm gonna start counting. 1, 2, 3, smile. One more time. 1, 2, 3, smile. Ready? Okay. Let me welcome you back again. Welcome you again on the session of sustainable aging, and allow me to invite Professor Rintoro Mori to have the keynote speech. The Professor Mori is a regional advisor on the population aging and sustainable development at UNFPA Asia Pacific Office. After the pediatric training in Japan, he practiced in Australia, Nepal, and in the UK. As a senior physician and studied epidemiology public health at the London School of Hygiene and Lands. Tropical medicine before involving in a guideline development for NICE UK. He has also actively been involved in the research at work in Madagascar, Bangladesh, and Mongolia, as well as research in health system and women and children health. At the both national and global level, he was appointed as the Director, Department of the Health Policy at the National Center for Child Health and Development, and the Professor in the Health Policy for Family and Children at Kyoto University, where he pursued his research on his life course approach to achieve sustainable social and healthcare system in the context of population aging since 2012, before taking up his current role in 2018. Today, Professor Mori will give us the keynote speech on the global viewpoint on the population aging. Professor Mori, over to you, please.
ขอบคุณครับคุณจันจิตสวัสดีครับอาจารย์สุจิรัตน์อาจารย์ชัพคาม everyone, all the distinguished scholars and distinguished speakers and all participants. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, whatever you are. I guess I think the great majority of you, good afternoon, I guess. So thank you very much for this opportunity sort of for us to the UNFPA to talk about sort of the global view on the population aging. And I think we actually sort of we've been working on this population aging from the more sort of the demographic point of view. But as you know, the trend of the population aging is closely related to other trends, for example, climate change, and as well as the new sort of the technological innovations, or maybe the inequality as well. So let me start actually sort of my presentation. I think let me just open it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So I actually really want to talk about the life cycle approach. Even it's actually the population aging related to the other actual mega trends, I think the principle will be the same to the life cycle approach. We're not necessarily only focused on older persons. I think that we need to actually focus on all generations to be prepared for the population aging. That's actually my main message, actually. So last year, the United Nations released a new report. It's called the report of the UN Economic Network of the UN 75th anniversary, shaping the trend of our time. In this report, we talked about 5 megatrends which would affect our lives greatly. First one is climate change. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. We all talk about it now. And the second trend is a demographic shift, particularly population aging. The third one is urbanization. And the fourth one is the emergence of the digital technologies. And the fifth one is inequalities. So these 5 megatrends are very important for us to think about the future of our society. And I think I'm going to really talk sort of go into depth of the sort of population aging. We're all worried about old age dependency ratio. So the dependency ratio means that the ratio of the population aged 65 years old over to the population aged 15 to 64. So it means that sort of the 100% of the working age should be the supporting how many numbers of the older persons. So you can see that I think all of the world, the population aging it's a huge problem in the near future. But particularly, I think this is significant in the eastern part of Asia. Of course, in Thailand is a part of, Thailand is a part of I think more than sort of the southern east of Asia, but actually similar trend to the East Asia. So people worried about financial sustainability actually of the society. Is that really the problem? So I think that we use this national transfer account. It's actually sort of analytical tool to use even using the sort of the GPT or the other sort of the other data, economic data, to discuss whether any country could be actually sort of the financially sustainable in terms of population aging. So I use the example of my own country, Japan. You can see that if you could have a look at the left-hand side, when you're a child, you're actually supported by the society. Certainly, children do not work, shouldn't work. And I think they consume a lot for the education, which is very natural. You can see that that trend is very similar to any countries. I think they use in Japan as an example, but that trend is very similar to any other countries. So left-hand side, you consume, and I think the invest, it's actually the invest for the future. When you get older, you start working. So when you are working age, probably great majority are in the working age, you actually earn, then you consume. That means that the positive deficit, the part, is going to support other generations. But when you're getting older, you retire to this sort of, you're actually going to be retired at some point. The retirement age might be very different by the country or society, or maybe the situation. If you are in informal sector, you might not actually be able to retire soon. But anyway, at some point, you're retired. Then when you're retired, you can see at the right-hand side, you consuming the social care or maybe health care. but you don't learn. That means that, the middle ground, top one, that part is going to support both the childhood and older sort of age. When you think about sort of the trend of the population age, in particular the old person, the dependency ratio, this is why I think many governments are worried about financial sustainability. By years and years, the right-hand side, you can see that, the chunk for the older persons just increased. So whether the societies can be sustainable financially or not, that's a worry. So how is it going to do it? I think our suggestion is actually going to the more in-depth in the analysis on that. For example, using this Japan as an example, you can see the trend year by year. The blue line is in 1984 to the red one is in 2009. It's a bit old data, but years by year, your independence as a child is also going to shift on the right-hand side. Means that it's taking time, more time, to be financially independent. So you're actually taking more time to have education, actually. Many people going to the education, that means that your certain age of the working is going to be pushed away, so they postponed. But if you could look at the right-hand side, retirement has not been changed greatly. That's because of the societal system, right? But let's actually talk, they look back and think about it. So 60 years old, 20 years ago, are completely different from the 60 years old these days. They are much healthier, right? And then wonder, what is sort of the difference? What has the impact? What is actually the nature of the population? How is that actually different from the societal system, right? So in the old era, we actually all say, the aging means that the proportion of older persons is increased, like this figure, right? It's not actually true. It's just sort of the extension of the whole of life course, right? And I think that the retirement has not been great change. That's because of the societal system. Well, you actually sort of invest more on that. Actually, this is in particularly this example, very sort of the good example in Thailand as well as Japan, that you actually invest on more on actually higher education, which is a really good thing, right? And you are aiming to have a sort of the more income in the middle ground, working age, right? But is that really sort of what the population needs? That's the sort of what we need to think about, because I think the sort of the chronological age is no longer relevant to assess the functionality of the persons. The functionalities of the persons is very different by the individuals, of course. But if you actually look at the population level, it is certainly different. But we still use the definition of the older persons as a 60 years or 65 years, depends on the country you live. That's probably not relevant anymore. So what we need to think about is, because of the whole of life course is expanded, we actually need to focus on lifelong flexible choice of education, childbearing, work, and care. That's related to the law fertility as well. That means that sort of the whole of society system might not be actually sort of the matching what the people need. But having said that, what we need to think about is the gap between healthy life expectancy and a life expectancy. If there is a gap between these two has been widened, that's going to be the huge issue, right? Because it has an implication of the financial burden or financial implication. I actually use like an example in Thailand and Sri Lanka and Japan. There's very similar trend, but you can see that years upon years, whether it's increase or whether decrease, you can see that there is a different trend for the male and the female. This is a very important trend. And how are we going to actually narrow between the healthy life expectancy and life expectancy? What we need to think about is actually sort of the non-communicable diseases burden, like hypertension, diabetes, and the life, the life habitant actually sort of the diseases. So prevention is very important. But not only that, there's a famous study called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. You have actually TED Talk, so you can have a look at it actually. He's a director. He said that from the sort of the result of the Harvard Study of the Adult Development, what he found is that the clearest message that we got from the 75-year study is that good relationship is the sort of the sole determinant to keep us happier and healthier, not necessarily only happier and healthier too. That means that not only actually a healthy habit, we actually need to think about the relationship together, not actually just sort of the number of friends, but the quality of the growth of the relationship is a key factor throughout the whole life course of the sort of well-being, not actually sort of the income might as well. So what we need to think about is such a sort of a societal aspect from the sort of the beginning of this actually the life towards the end, to make the sort of the people healthier and happier. That's how to actually reduce the sort of the financial burden. So what we actually sort of think about is a life cycle approach is population aging itself is not a problem. People actually perceive it as a problem, which is actually probably wrong. It's actually a triumph, right? Longevity, and I think the fertility choices, and I think the lower mortality. So all good things. So it's not a problem. The problem is more about sort of the societal system doesn't often match their population needs. So the societal system, so the institutions need to change their policy and mindset, because these institutions these days are actually all set in a very different era where the population is different. So rapid population aging could be actually characterized by the extreme low fertility, which is likely to be a symptom. It's not a problem, it's a symptom of the societal system failures. So we actually borrowed the climate science, the three-double talk, the mitigation, adaptation, resilience. If you use that, apply that actually the three method into the population aging, we say, let's say on the mitigation, improving well-being for those in need today, that is required, not for only for the older persons. Adaptation, improving the current and the future condition of the people who has already had many aspects of their life course in train. Or resilience, ensuring the youngest in the society age well and maximize their society and economic potential. So we've been actually supporting, to unable to do so, we need to have a sort of lifelong flexible choice in education, childbearing, work care. So actually free from sort of the problem of the sort of the societal system. So that's what we're actually talking about. Now, the question is really how that population aging is related to the climate change. There are many actually aspects. I think they're not going to go into the details about it, but I think fundamentally there are two main aspects. First one is how that climate change is going to affect the population aging, maybe also particularly all focus on older persons. So older persons, including particularly older persons with disabilities and older women, are among those who are most affected by climate-related harms we know, such as increasing spread of vector-borne diseases, heat stress, and increasing frequency in deaths in sudden and slow onset disasters, which can impact on their physical and mental health and well-being. But at the same time, it's not necessarily only the negative aspect as a burdenable population of older persons, but also at the same time, as we actually in Japanese, and we got a lot of natural disasters like earthquakes, we knew that older persons possess a vast reserves of knowledge and experience and resilience, making their participation, inclusion, and leadership key to human rights-based global efforts to adapt to mitigate the adverse effect of climate change as well. So positive side as well. On the right-hand side, I'd like to talk about the population aging, how that is going to impact on climate change as well. There are lots of studies on that. I think but I think it's very important studies actually coming from the OECD studies, actually OECD countries. It's a bit old, but I think they is still relevant. The empirical result demonstrated per capita CO2 emission increased initially with the economic growth. We knew that. But however, after reaching the per capita income level of the US $24,000, it started fading, right? There's a trend. But more importantly, with regard to the aging, the co-integrating vector indicates that at a 1% increase in the share of Asian population will reduce the per capita CO2 emission by 1.55% in the long run. So not necessarily on the actual, for example, reduce the waste. And I think there is a positive effect, if an impact by actually aging population as well. So it's actually, you can see that the complex issues sort of included in this sort of climate change and population aging. I'd like to actually to show you this sort of the short video to sort of finalize my talk.
Welcome to the future. It is 2050. In Asia Pacific, 1 in 4 people are above the age of 60. The majority of them are women. Is she healthy? Is she financially secure? Is she active? Is she happy? Let's rewind. Today, the world's demography is rapidly changing. Women are having fewer babies. People are living longer. Asia Pacific is at the forefront of population aging, but is the region growing older before it grows richer? To bridge the income gap, we must bridge the gender gap. Every girl should have access to quality healthcare and education. She should be equipped with skills and knowledge that set a foundation for life and love. Every woman should have access to rights-based family planning so that she can choose her lifelong pathway. She should be able to decide whether she wants to have children, and if so, when, how many, and with whom. She needs to be able to deliver her baby safely, improving her long-term health as well as the health of her child. She needs to be safe from violence and be in healthy and happy relationships. She needs to be given equal opportunity to actively contribute to society. Only then can she age with dignity. Only then can we age with dignity. A life cycle approach paves the way for a healthy life, a prosperous life, a happy life. We need to start early. We need to start now. There's little time to lose.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mori. Thank you for the wonderful presentation that you show us like very clear picture on the trend of the aging population in the future. And the last video is very touching, by the way. And the thing that I have heard from you is like the 5 mega trend that we have to be aware of, but not only the 5 mega trend that we have to be aware, but the most thing that we have to be aware is about the quality of living and the quality of life in the not only for this generation, but maybe the further or the generation in the next generation. And once again, when you mention about the climate change could be the thing that could be more like relevant in the quality of life. And thank you very much. And allow me to lead you to the session of sustainable aging, the impact and the challenges. Before I go for that, I would like to get your attention again that like, if you have a questions, please leave the question in the chat box, and then we can go over at the end of the talk. And then let's say about the climate change. The climate change is a big picture over the past 2 decades, and the climate change problem significantly affect not only the physical, but also the big hit to the social problem. Gratefully, we have Mr. Andrew Burling with us. He is Economics and Prosperity Counselor at the UK Permanent Representative to UNICEF, British Embassy, Bangkok, Thailand. He will share us on the climate change and vulnerability impact and the challenge in the 21st century. Over to you, Mr. Andrew, and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Khunchandit. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning if you are joining us from other places. Distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to speak to you, Professor Chakkapan, and Assistant Professor Suthirat. It's a pleasure. I am very pleased to be talking to you about sustainable aging and climate change today. I'm going to focus more on the climate change side of things, but I wanted to note in particular that actually The UK, like Thailand, shares an aging population. And when we thought about our industrial strategy, we named an aging society and having a healthy aging society as one of our 4 key goals for the UK. And we targeted 5 extra years of healthy, independent life for every individual by 2035. 2 of the other grand challenges that we named were about climate change. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But if you'll permit me a little bit of a digression, I used to work for a while in the nuclear industry, and specifically thinking about how you clean up after nuclear power, because as you'll all know, nuclear power leaves waste that can last more than 10,000 years. And in the UK, we have a lot of nuclear power stations, and we're only really now thinking about, over the last 20 years, thinking about what you do with the legacy of 50 years of nuclear power. Now, it turns out when you have nuclear waste, you have to put it underground somewhere where it can't have any radiation leaking out for 10,000 years. How do you plan for 10,000 years? The obvious thing is you think about geology, right? You think about preventing floods and earthquakes and other things that could get to your nuclear waste. But then you start to realize that in 10,000 years, you're not sure what language the people on Earth will be speaking if there are still people on Earth. And so you start thinking about having pictograms and all these other things as a way of planning for if someone accidentally unearths this stuff. And the more we thought about this, the more we realized that people are terrible at planning for the future. And I think we see that a bit when we talk about aging. We think a lot about an aged society right now and the challenges. I think we think with less clarity about what this looks like in 20, 30 years, and in particular in our own lives. And I hope that what I can talk about today in terms of climate change is really why those risks are more immediate. And it is critical that as we think about an aging society and having a greater proportion of people living longer as retired people and in their 60s, 70s, 80s, that we think about the impacts of climate change. Now, in the UK, for about 2 decades, we've actually had to think more about climate change. And that's because we started to experience much more severe flooding about I would guess it was about 2005, 2006. And to give you kind of an illustration of this, some of you may have been to London. You might know that London sits on the River Thames, and we have actually, it's the seas here, we have a barrier, a lot like Bangkok, except we've got a barrier basically. So if there's a storm, we close a barrier in the river to stop water from inundating the city, from flooding London. Now, in the first 10 years after the barrier was completed, from 1982 to 1992, we used that barrier 10 times because of the risk of flooding due to storms. But climate change has changed that. We monitor very carefully the climate, and we know that the risk is getting much worse. And actually, in the last 10 years, we have raised the barrier 80 times to protect London from storms. So we can't take this as pure science, but we can say the risk of flooding due to climate change has gone up many times over. And what that means for our people in our population, in many cases, is that now they start to factor some of these risks into their own personal decisions. And their long-term planning, they're planning for where they're going to live as they get older, for their pensions, and for all these other things. And actually, for example, in the UK now, when you buy a house, you usually look at the map of projected future flooding risk, because you think a lot about, is my house going to be on a floodplain? Will it flood in the future? Can I get insurance against this, or will the insurers refuse to let me have insurance for this reason? Now, I mentioned flooding in particular, A, because it's a risk in the UK, but B, also because Bangkok has exactly the same risk. And I'm not sure I see the same, and other parts of Thailand, by the way, and I'm not sure I see as yet the same thinking about what does it look like in 20, 30, 40 years. We know, based on the sort of World Bank's details and other details, that Bangkok sits about 1.5 meters above sea level. And we also know that unfortunately Bangkok is sinking and the sea level is rising. So the sea level relative to Bangkok is increasing in height by 20 centimeters every 10 years. Now, you don't have to be great at maths to know that it overtakes after sort of 70 years or so. But the bigger risk immediately is from storms and inundation of sea. And the World Bank has warned that by 2030, 40% of Bangkok could routinely be flooded. Now, I wonder how many businesses and how many individuals are thinking about whether they have bought a house or a business on a floodplain. What are these risks of climate change look like going forward? So that's just one illustration, but I wanted to use that because I think that's quite a direct one of how it works in the UK, or how it's a risk in the UK and how it could be a risk for Thailand. The UN's expert intergovernmental panel on climate change has warned that without action right now, and in fact this year, leading to us halving the amount of greenhouse gases that the world emits by 2030, we face inevitable catastrophic climate change. And Thailand is actually among the countries that faces the greatest risks from this. If you look over the last 20 years, Thailand is one of the top 10 countries, along with 3 Southeast Asian neighbors, Myanmar, Vietnam, and the Philippines, that have been most affected by climate change. And we expect that to continue. So I'm going to talk quickly about the risks, specific risks of climate change. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those impacts. And then I'm going to come back just to talk about 2 areas that actually one of which has already been mentioned, that I think we should think about, particularly when we're thinking about an aging society. So we've talked already a bit about the risk of severe weather events. In the last 4 decades here in East Asia, or we're in Southeast Asia, but in East Asia, the number of Category 4 and Category 5 typhoons that happens over a sort of decade-long basis has doubled. So if you look back to like 1980s and now, there are twice as many severe typhoons now. And we can see the impacts of that often in our news, but we don't always track the trend in the same way that perhaps we don't in Thailand for flooding to really think about the impacts of this stuff. So extreme weather events is one. Food security is going to be another real challenge. We all know the world population is growing. 50% more food will be required to feed that population by 2050. The problem is that with a combination of droughts and famines and other challenges, water security in particular, we project that without major changes in technology or greater efforts, there is a likelihood that yields will decline by 30% in terms of food security by 2050. And in fact, if you look at the ADB's research, Asian Development Bank's research, you'll find that buried in their details is a report that projects that rice production from the Chao Phraya Basin could fall by 30% as soon as 2035. And so you see those trends, unfortunately, in Thailand too, in terms of flooding and droughts having a major impact. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on water insecurity, but of course, that's a major challenge. Likewise, I'm not going to talk as much about displacement of populations. That is a real risk. And we talk quite a lot about the risk that it is simply too hot to live in a lot of places in the world. Thailand sits, depending on when you project out, sort of 30, 50, 100, 150 years, and what you think is going to happen. Thailand sort of sits on the edge of that zone of where we think may become uninhabitable over the next sort of period, even until 2100. So actually, that's quite immediate timescales for that. And one of the biggest challenges, actually, as you're projecting out climate change, is around heat waves. Which I think my sort of the previous speaker mentioned, in fact. So, I mean, we think about heat waves in terms of 2 things. One is the impact on labor productivity. So in 2019, it's hard to really think of these in real terms, but 302 billion working hours were lost due to heat waves that made it impossible to work in parts of the world. And that's 50% more than 2000. So when we're thinking about old age dependency ratios and how the kind of current generation is going to support the older generation, this is a key sort of element along with all these other risks with climate change. But of course, the one that's more relevant to an aging population is that the number of people experiencing heat waves is increasing massively. In fact, by 2050, we expect 90% of the world's population to experience a heat wave at least once a year. And elderly people, as you probably know, are particularly vulnerable to this. In fact, we tend to classify those over 65 as the most vulnerable. And something like 130 million more people have become classified as at risk due to heat waves over the last 15 years or so alone. And if you project that out with climate change, the rate of risk of climate change of increasing, it looks a lot more serious. So those are kind of the key risks. I wanted to highlight heat waves because the elderly population are more affected by that. But I also wanted to talk about something else, which I think perhaps we don't think about immediately, but which actually for me is the most serious and most immediate risk of climate change for older people. And it's financial risk, which of course drops out of everything we've been talking about. So I mentioned before, insurance becomes a problem. As soon as you have very frequent extreme weather events, flooding, droughts, you cannot get insurance. And that's the first sort of thing that flips over. But the other thing is, if you hold investments, a lot of those investments may be at risk, either because they're at risk of becoming stranded assets. So you invested in something that isn't a long-term viable technology with climate change, like coal-fired power. But more likely, or for me, the greater risk is because those assets are for some reason put at risk because of climate change. So you invested in a company that has most of its factories, I don't know, for the sake of argument, somewhere on the eastern seaboard that gets inundated routinely with flooding by 2040. Or you invested in a piece of infrastructure that causes this problem, or that is affected by this problem. Now, there's a big risk here, which is the systemic risk to the economy when an extreme weather event happens, or there's a major change in climate, or whatever else it is, over a period of, a year, 2 years, or even less. And now, sort of financial regulators, and in particular central banks, are starting to think a lot about that. But I think the risk is actually most to those who are investing in pensions as well, because a lot of people put their futures in pension companies or in a specific, investments. And infrastructure is a key investment for most pension companies. And if they have not thought about the systemic risk of climate change, there is a high risk that some of their very high value assets, in the past I've worked with pension companies, and we've sort of encouraged them to invest in major UK assets to the tune of billions of dollars. But if these companies haven't thought about this, the investments, the nest egg, the long-term financial security of those who are older people can be put at risk. So I'm going to finish off now, but I would say that's why for the UK and others, we've been pushing very hard for a lot of companies to start having climate-related financial disclosures to really assess their risk from these things, whether it's flooding or drought or whatever else. And we've also been pushing for central banks around the world to do what's known as climate stress tests. So to do a systematic assessment of the economy and how much risk there is, particularly in the banking sector that holds all the loans and other risks. And I'm pleased to say that we're doing a lot of work with the Thai government on that, and that it's really an area of key joint interest. I'm just going to finish by saying something which isn't directly related to climate change, but it is related to all our futures, which is at the end of this month, the UK is hosting COP26, which is the UN Global Climate Negotiation. Now, we have heard what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said. We are pushing for the world to take action to mitigate climate change. We can't prevent it now, it's too late for that, but prevent catastrophic climate change. We're calling on every country to sign up to cut their emissions radically. we would be keen for Thailand to do the same and to come out with a long-term strategy for how it plans to manage those emissions. But a key part of this will be thinking about the impact of climate on all these elements of society. And for us, the aged population is most at risk from a lot of this, and not in 50 years' time, in 10 to 20 years' time in a lot of cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew. From your talk, I have heard a lot of risks that the aging people have to dealing with, not only for the climate change, but like it goes for maybe financial risk and the pension. And actually, like from the thing like I have seen, it's like the direction of the trend of the aging and the climate change is like go in the same direction. So it's like for in the future that we have to be aware of, and we have to think wisely from now. And thank you very much. And we're going to come back to you for the question at the end about like the COP27 or something that deals with like the aging population. And next, not only the climate change, that really big challenge for the aging population, or like another like I mean like the total population of the world, but the COVID-19 pandemic is still, it's like the one of the disaster that is coming up in like the last few years and is still on. The vaccine could help to reduce the number of deaths and infected, who are most vulnerable for those kind of disaster, and how do they facing it. We have Dr. Nagami Yuiko. She is an assistant professor of the Department of Tokyo Metropolitan Health Policy, Tokyo Medical and Dental University, and a board member of Japan Agency for Gerontological Evaluation Studies, or JH. Her profession in public health, social epidemiology, and the family medicine. She is engaged in the medical care in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, including the response to the COVID-19. And she will share us on the aged population and the prompt response to disaster as a COVID-19. Dr. Yuiko, over to you, please.
All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Professor Stila. Is it right? Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chandrit. Okay, I'm straightly talk about my topic today. Actually, I belong to the research group about healthy aging in Japan, and this is called J-AGES. Which is abbreviation for Japan's Gerontological Evaluation Study. So our colleague will explain about it later in the later session. So I will talk about the COVID-19 in super-aged society in Japan. I will share my slides. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So this is the situation now and before COVID-19 in Japan. Actually, around 2020 to 2025, our rate of aging, that is the ratio of population aged over 65 years old, is around 30%. So it's been already 1 in 3 people in Japan. And since January 2020 to now, we had a confirmed case of COVID-19 is about 1,709,000 in total. And we had 5 waves like this because of the Delta. The 5th wave is really huge. But before that, the highest number of daily new cases was about 6,000. But when you see daily new death, the wave was not that high as daily new cases in Japan, as Mr. Chandit said, maybe because of vaccination mainly. And in 1 year before, September 2020, cases among people over 60 years old in total cases was 20.5%. Death among people 60 plus for total death was around 95% in Japan. mortality rates among people 60 plus was 8.3%. But now, in July 2021, cases among people 60 plus was 7.24%. Death among people over 60 plus is 78%. Mortality age is hugely down to 1.6%. The situation of medical care for elderly people in Japan is under Act on the Prevention of Infectious Diseases and Medical Care for Patients with Infectious Diseases in Japan. COVID-19 infection is defined as designated infectious disease category 2, which is the second category of the infectious diseases, the risk of infectious diseases in 5 categories. Category 1 is like Marburg or Lassa, etc. But in category 2, we have TBs or RTV or diphtheria, SARS, MERS, etc. So COVID-19 is compatible to the category 2. So basically, all COVID-19 positive older people should be admitted to the hospital. But not every positive patient could be admitted to the hospital because of their dementia or beds fully occupied. And the condition of long-term care. So before talking about the situation, COVID-19 and long-term care, I briefly explain about the long-term care system in Japan. Japanese long-term care system consists of social insurance system, partly compensated by tax. So all Japanese above 40 years old are compulsory registered in public long-term care system. And premium is subtracted automatically from the salary. The core payment is basically 10%. If your income is higher, 20 to 30%, it could be the core payment as well. And if you want to use the insurance system, you have to be certified as an individual who have long-term care needs. And we have 7 levels of care needs. It depends on each level. You have the upper limit of the service covered by tax or covered by the insurance. And the variety of long-term services in Japan is like this. Maybe in Thailand, same, I think. The home visit services, day services, short stay services, they are home-based services. And the latter 2 is residential services and in-facility services. So about 20%, 15 to 20% of elderly people in Japan has the certification. And another 80% of elderly people doesn't have any. And in those, about 1 million people are in the in-facility services, and others are using the home visit or like home-based care. So for the home-based care, for the people with home-based care, services were easily stopped because of COVID-19, because the infection of the service providers or service users or close contact as well. And for the in-facility services, clusters happened frequently, especially by June 2020. By June 2021, 25 to 35% of clusters happened in Japan were in those facilities for elderly care. And the elderly people with home visit services, they had a risk of having sleep disorders 7.4 to 7.6 times higher, and if they didn't know how to access medical care when they were infected, for example. Also, the long-term care prevention intervention is really important. For long-term care prevention, now the frequency of interactions with others, as Dr. Mori told, the social interaction is really important for healthy aging. So the graph says if you have close contact, and not close, but the interaction with other people less than once a month, your risk of having long-term care needs or dementia or death in 10 years later, in 10 years, is statistically significantly higher than the ones who have the interaction more than once a week. But unfortunately, COVID-19 made us this direct contact or meeting between people very difficult. So cognitive and physical care needs were increased for elderly people. So for those problems, we responded like this. So vaccination was actually a big game changer in Japan as well. Japanese government started to have the vaccination for people aged 65 plus in May 2021. And 90% of them already completed the vaccination twice by today. And for infected elderly people, basically, as I said, they had to admit to hospital. But if they can't, because of dementia or other family reasons, home-based medical care were provided as well. So we, doctors or nurses, they usually go to their home directly and prescribe steroids, antibody capsule therapy sometimes, and oxygen. And for facility clusters, in some areas in Japan, medical staffs immediately joined the facility and collaborate with long-term care staffs to manage it, or sometimes educate or train how to make the red zone or yellow zone or something like a green zone, for example. And also, in some areas, long-term care staff collaboration scheme were also established, which is if one facility has a cluster, some staffs from other facility came to support their management. And for long-term care prevention, online salon or online fitness contents were provided. For example, JHS did this online salon intervention in one municipality in Japan. That was, so starting with, to begin with, we educate how to use the mobile mobile tools, for example, mobile phones or iPad for elderly people. And before having that intervention, the number of people who told us we could confidently use that mobile tools was about 50%. But after that intervention, the number increased to 80%. And after that, we asked again, do you think it's possible to continue online salon? Kainova salon means salon. So 80% or more responded, we can continue online salon, they said. Yes, so we are continuing that kind of intervention as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your information. And it seemed like the COVID-19 is not that bad. It seemed like it's opened the door of open opportunity for to revise or to rethink about how to taking care of the older people. And like what you said about the prevention or and then the digital literacy have to be increased, or the thing that had to be revised and have to be ready for something like COVID-19 would happen again. Because the COVID-19 is not already just stopped yet, but keep on going on that. And thank you very much. So we have heard a lot of the impact, not only for the aging population, but it seems like it's the impact and challenges to all mankind, not only for the climate change or the COVID-19, but it's about time to move up to do something about the aging population. So now, so far we have heard the big change in elderly and encounter have the encounter with it. And allow me to bring over the situation of elderly in Thailand, meeting up with the expert, Mrs. Suchitra Pitaya Noraset. She is the Director General of Department of the Older Person, the Ministry of Social Development and the Human Security, Thailand. She is an expert in the elderly field, and her notable work is policy formulation for the elderly in Thailand, and therefore she will enlighten us on the aging population in Thailand as like the overview and like on the situation of aging population in Thailand. She is here with us, but unfortunately, the Department of the Older Person is just relocated. The internet network may be not stable. So on the behalf of that, I would like to share her presentation. Did you see the screen?
Yes, go ahead with that. We saw your
Okay.
screen. It seems that we could not hear from the speaker. Excuse me, Kun Chantit, did you hear from the speaker?
Yes. Oh, let me fix it.
Nearly 1/3 of the Thai population is over 60 years old.
Better?
The population
Yes. So can you make it a little bit more louder for the listen her presentation?
by lower mortality and below replacement fertility. You can see from this graph the combination of these two demographic forces result in the proportion of population to 60 and over time from 2020 to 2040. And older persons is more than male during the same period. According to Thailand demographics, life expectancy at birth for Thailand increasing from 53.2 years in 1955 to 77.7 years at present. There are many challenges for the elderly in Thailand. Begin with the rapid increase of the aging population.
Okay, sorry for about the clip. So we're gonna move this clip to, maybe we move to the end to make it better sound for us. And then shall we start with, like, we can go on for the next section first. Sorry about that to Ms. Suchitra, and we're gonna come back to you later. And okay, next session is about like the sustainable aging on what is the way forward. Actually, the key point on Ms. Suchitra says about like the Thailand aging challenge that have to do with society, health, economies, environment, and technology innovation. So I have heard about something like the digital that we have to be aware of. So we want to know how does this work and how to make it work. Allow me to have Ms. Kasama Kongsamak. She is the Executive Vice President for the Policy and Security at the Digital Economy Promotion Agency, or DIPA. And a big part of her job is promoting digital inclusion, digital awareness, and digital adaptation in vulnerable groups, including elderly and people with disabilities. Therefore, she will talk on the digital literacy and aging population, so we can see like how does it work in the term of vulnerability. Ms. Kasama, yes, please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kasama Kongsamak from Digital Economy Promotion Agency, or DIPA in Thailand. It's a pleasure to be joining your panel on sustainable aging today. And let's just see. My slide is not moving, sorry. Oh, right, yeah. So just this slide is just to put things in perspective. With better medicine, better healthcare, life expectancy for people from all over the world has become longer, and it's the same in Thailand. Data from the World Bank basically said life expectancy goes from 70 years in 2000 to 78 years in 2018. I guess my message is that, well, we get to be older, which is good, but with that, we would need to have a better quality of life as well. So from DIPA's perspective, part of our mission is, mission by law, is to promote the quality of life of the people of our groups, including elderly, senior citizens, through digital technology and innovation. So on this slide, you would see that the Thai people over 50 do have smartphones, like 89.9% is quite a lot, but only half of that use the internet, and only about 6% uses the computer. But why don't they use the internet? Our National Statistical Office did a survey that say 55% just don't know how to use it, and roughly the other half are just not interested. So our job here at DIPA is to fix the issue. The goal is to basically improve digital literacy for aging population nationwide. We do have 8 branch offices around the country, and we did the upskilling through short training programs before COVID. And I think we've trained about 10,000 people for the past 1 or 2 years. But with COVID, we are moving everything online. So we're doing the training through online courses using Zoom. We can do that now, which is good. And few of them are quite popular. This slides just show our short training program to basically teach basic digital skills for older people, from teaching them to use basic applications like Line, Facebook, YouTube, Google, to raising digital awareness, basically help them go online safely, and to teaching them some fun stuff online, like creating live stickers and making video clips. They can do it. They can do it better than I can now. It's impressive. And we also have intermediate digital skills programs. These are for people over 50. The other one was for 60 to 80. The oldest was like 84. But this one is a little younger, like you start at maybe 40s, 50s. But we do have many people in their 30s and 40s trying to join our programs as well. The idea is that we are entering aging society, but we will get kicked out of our job at 60, right? But we have to live to be 90, and then you have 30 years of doing nothing, which is kind of bad because will you have enough money to survive 20, 30 years without a job? So that's the problem, right? So the programs here have been set up to give people in their 50s basically some new skills, preparing them for a second chance, second career at life. We have training programs from e-commerce, basically selling things online or opening food shops online, to smart farming program. If people like to farm, to grow things, they could, become a smart farmer. And it's very easy for older people because you use application to kind of do your own farming, and you can make money. If you don't make money, you can eat your own vegetable, which is very good. And we also do have some hardcore digital skill program like Python, Java and stuff, but this is basically for ex-programmer or old engineers, not just for anyone. So those were the courses, but this one, we do have our own online community called Retro OK, which is a Facebook group. It's basically a help desk for members. I think we have about, it's been 6 months, and then we have about 4,000 members now joining us. Last one, this is just a fun one. Since we do training, but we can't do too many people, just because, we only have like a few staff, but we do cyber awareness as well. We do try to raise digital awareness using viral video clips. This one is basically done by Salmon House and has about 3-4 million views already. It's quite funny, but it is in Thai though.
มาแล้วค่ะ
พลอยอ้วนขึ้นป่ะเนี่ย
นิดนึงค่ะ
แล้วตอนนี้ทำอะไรอ่ะ
เป็นนักเขียนค่ะ
อ้าวเป็นนักเขียนก็ไส้แห้ง
เป็
อะ
น
เด็
คอนเทนต์ครีเอเตอร์เหรอ ดี แล้วตอนนี้หนูเขียนอยู่เจ้าไหนล่ะ
The Proper ค่ะ
แปลว่าก็ทำคอนเทนต์ไลฟ์สไตล์ดีนะ แต่วิดีโอเอสเซเรื่องคริปโตเนี่ยมันย้อยไปหน่อย ได้ยินว่าเขาเปิดพอดแคสต์ใหม่
แล้วมีแฟนหรือยัง
เป็น
อะ
นักเขียนดีแล้ว ไม่ว่าอนาคตมีเดียมันจะเปลี่ยนไปยังไงนะ Storytelling เนี่ยมันก็สำคัญที่สุดอยู่ดี
โกเห็นเราชอบเขียนตั้งแต่เด็กนะทำตามความฝันตัวเองอ่ะดีละ
ทำสิ่งที่ตัวเองชอบมันก็ดีหมดแหละ
ทำสิ่งที่ตัวเองชอบอ่ะมันก็ดีหมดแหละ
เก่งมากค่ะโก
โอเคครับแปะเดี๋ยวต่อไปแปะชวนคุยเรื่องหนังที่พลอยชอบนะครับพลอยได้ยินว่าสไปซ์จอนเขารีมาสเตอร์หนังใหม่เหรอ
สไปซ์จอนอะไรวะ
แต่พูดกับใครวะ
พลอยได้ยินว่าสไปซ์จอนเขารีมาสเตอร์หนังใหม่เหรอ
เราต้องยอมรับกันแล้วนะครับว่าช่องว่างระหว่างวัยเนี่ยมันมีอยู่จริงและนับวันเนี่ยคนสองวัยยิ่งไม่เข้าใจกันมากขึ้นนี่เลยเป็นเหตุผลที่ผมต้องตั้งและพัฒนาแอปชื่ออาวุโสแอปสำหรับผู้สูงอายุที่มีบริการพรีเมียมบัตเลอร์ให้คำปรึกษาอย่างใกล้ชิดเรียลไทม์
สวัสดีครับสวัสดีครับป้าขอกุญแจรถหน่อยไปเอาของ
สอนนี่โชคดีนะ ได้ลูกชายลูกสาวในคนเดียวกันเลย โอ้ยไม่ต้องอายหรอกป้าเห็นนิ้วก้อยเยอะป้าก็รู้ตั้งแต่
อยากจะเข้าคณะอะไรอ่ะ
วารสารธรรมศาสตร์ครับ
แล้วอย่างนี้ชุดนักศึกษาจะใส่กระโปรงหรือกางเกงอะ
เสื้อนี่มันยุคไหนละเจนเดอร์ฟูอีกอ่ะมันก็เรื่องปกติป่ะฟังโกนะ อยากทำอะไรอยากเป็นอะไรเป็นไปเลย ไม่ต้องสนใจเสียงรอบข้างโกเอาใจช่วย
เก่งมากค่ะโก
สวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีค่ะโก
ต้องทักหัวอ้วนแปะห้ามทักเรื่องน้ำหนักนะครับ ให้ชวนคุยเรื่องซีรีส์ที่จอยเขาชอบดู แต่การทักเรื่องรูปร่างนี่มันเป็นการเบรกดีไอที่ง่ายที่สุดนะ ไม่ได้ครับแปะมันเป็นการบอดี้เชมิ่งเขาจะเป็นอะไรก็เรื่องของเขาครับแปะต้องทักว่าอ้วนไม่นะแปะต้องทักว่าอ้วนเลคโค้ดส่งยาไปที่โกเล็กที
ได้ค่ะ โกเล็ก
อดทนไว้เฮีย
แต่เขาทำกันแบบนี้มาตั้งนานแล้ว
แต่สิ่งที่เขาทำกันมาตั้งนาน มันก็ไม่ใช่สิ่งที่ถูกเสมอไป
ไม่
คิดถึงตอนเป็นเด็กๆ เวลามีผู้ใหญ่มาทักเฮียก็ไม่ชอบไม่ใช่เหรอ สิ่งที่เราไม่ชอบก็อย่าไปทำกับคนอื่น มันมีแต่ผู้ใหญ่ห่วยๆเท่านั้นแหละที่ทำกัน แต่เฮียดีกว่านั้น
ไม่ฉันทนไม่ไหวแล้ว
ขอร้องล่ะ ให้มันจบที่พวกเรา
จอย แปะเห็นจอยแล้วเนี่ย แปะก็รู้สึกว่า จอยควรดูซีรีส์สตาร์ทอัพนะ เหมาะกับผู้ประกอบการวัยรุ่นแบบจอย
แปะก็ดูอะค่ะเนี่ยโห หนูติดมากเลยแปะ
เห็นไหมนะครับว่าอาวุโสจะทำให้คุณร่วมวงสนทนาได้อย่างแนบเนียน และไม่เผลอพูดอะไรที่ทำร้ายจิตใจวัยรุ่น นอกจากแอปอาวุโสแล้วเนี่ย ผมยังพัฒนาแอปอื่นๆด้วยนะครับ นี่คือแอป WhatsApp แอปรีวิววัดสำหรับสายบุญหรือนี่กิ๊กกับคอมมูนิตี้สำหรับผู้ที่ชอบรำไทยเก๊กและสุดท้าย Older แอปหาเพื่อนสูงวัยใครที่ชอบเมาส์มอย ชอบออกไปแฮงเอาท์ก็กดโหลดแอปนี้มาใช้ได้เลย ทั้งหมดเนี่ยผมไม่ยอมให้คำว่าไม้ใกล้ฝั่งหรือวัยเกษียณมาทำผมกลัวที่จะเรียนรู้เรื่องใหม่ๆถ้าใจมันได้ไม่มีใครแก่เกินใช้เทคโนโลยี
So I believe this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you very much for your presentation. But like for foreigner speaker who not understand Thai, I would like to tell you about the clip that she had just shown. It's about like the content or about like the gap between age of old elderly and the age of like the new generations. How to make them link, or technology could be the key to help them to understand, and like they can make any application or they can make anything that in terms of technology innovations to make it clear and to make it good. And before we jump up to the next presentation, let me go back to the slide, the video clip of Ms. Suchitra back again about like the social situation, the social aging population in Thailand. It's about like 3 to 4 minutes. Please bear with us. Could you please share the screen?
Yes ครับ please per minute ครับ
And the population aging in Thailand could be 1/3, could be the rank as a third of the world growth.
Did you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
สวัสดีค่ะ Good afternoon, distinguished guests and all participants. I'm Suchitra Pithiya Noraset, the Director General of the Department of Older Persons, Thailand. It's my greatest honor to have the opportunity to share the information about aging population in Thailand. In 2021, the aging population in Thailand is nearly 12 million persons, or around 18% of the overall population. So, it can be claimed that next year, in 2022, Thailand will become a complete age society because the proportion of older persons will reach 20%. Then, in a decade from now, in 2033, Thailand will be a super age society, where nearly 1/3 of the Thai population is over 60 years old. The population structure of Thailand is at an advanced state of demographic transition, evidenced by low mortality and below replacement fertility. You can see from this graph the combination of these two demographic processes result in the proportion of population age 60 and over increasing over time from 2020 to 2040. And you may see the female older persons is more than male during the same period. According to Thailand demographics, life expectancy at birth for Thailand increasing from 53.3 years in 1955 to 77.7 years at present. There are many challenges for the elderly in Thailand. Begin with the rapid increases of the aging population and demographic changes such as birth rate declining, the family becomes smaller, lack of labor force, and population structure is changing. Moreover, health issue about COVID-19 vaccination and inequality between urban and rural. In economics, most older persons still join the workforce because of a lack of saving and depend on monetary allowance from government. Environment, the Thai government attempt to renovate and create the concept of universal design in housing for a low-income family. Lastly, digital literacy for older persons is a significant issue to upskill nationwide. Thailand has the Thai Age Society and longevity measure aim to ensure entire older person in all aspects and are able to long life independently, which are firstly economy, promote income security and working in the elderly. Secondly, environment, provide universal design and appropriate environment. Thirdly, health, improve quality of life, enhance caregiver. Next, society. Elder rights advocacy protects the lives and social harmony. Lastly, technology and innovation improve digital skills and living with technology disruption. These dimensions will focus on the dignity and happiness of the older person to live within family and community. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much. สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you very much, Ms. Chitra Pithiya-Noraset, for the fruitful information about the aging population in Thailand. And we already have heard about like the technology, how it's work and how it's going to be worked for the aging population in the term of make it like better life or like the well-being. And now we're going to move to the sustainable aging, the way forward in the term of like academia or the scholars. This day, many scholars using the research on the population aging in the various dimensions, but how the research could lead to the policy and the action plans. We have Professor Vitpan Prachuapmawt here. She is the Dean of the College of Population Studies in Chulalongkorn University and also a director of Chula Ari. Her specialty in demography and aging population. She played a big role in drafting a national plan on older person and community of national strategy on reducing inequality in aging. And she will give us a talk on aging research innovation. Please, Professor Vitpan Prachuapmawt, over to you.
ค่ะ thank you สวัสดีค่ะ afternoon Bangkok and maybe good morning for the other part of the world. Okay, today I will talk about aging research innovation as a way forward for sustainable aging. Okay, population aging in the global and ASEAN regions will become far more pronounced in the coming decades. The share of older person among the total population has increased, and the oldest, age 80 years and above, is also growing. Population aging also leads to a continuously declining proportion of children and working age groups in conjunction with a sharp increase in the aging population. It leads to imbalance in population age structure. Such fast speed of population aging imply that developing countries will have relatively short time preparing the social welfare and services to respond to the aging society. Although most governments respond to population aging have been increasingly vigorous, the rapid demographic transition combined with disruptive technology and innovations and socioeconomic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic may be obstacle for policy implementation of older persons. The current negative socioeconomic situation has pushed older persons to become the most vulnerable group. These are some challenges to population quality of life in the 21st century, especially older persons in developing countries like Thailand. Low fertility or ultra-low fertility due to work-life imbalance are likely to change the pattern in living arrangements of family formations and the availability of adult children to support older persons. Older persons are more vulnerable to poverty and morbidity. Moreover, older persons also face problems of inequality, especially in terms of work opportunities and digital divide. These are some challenges to find a way forward. We need to find a solution to this issue. First is how to keep older persons healthy, active, and productive. During the past 2 decades, the underlying paradigm for policy response to population aging is active aging, which emphasizes promoting persons to remain active as long as possible. Economically and socially productive activities. During the this paradigm has been challenged by new normal of stay home and social distancing. It's time for us to seek new strategies and measures to keep older persons active and healthy while staying put. Unexpected circumstances in futures require more resilient and effective policy and programs. In addition, the government needs to various social protection systems for older persons and their family in response to rapid transition and unexpected challenge in the 21st century. Thirdly, how can education, employment, social environment, and technology support human development of an aging society and multi-stage life? In this context, people live longer and much more complex diverse state. In the second 21st century, life events are no longer just pursuing education during childhood, working during working age, retiring during senior years, and eventually dying. Along the lifespan, offer opportunities for continuous learning throughout one life. And life can be interchangeable, such as work, marriage, divorce, remarriage, reskill, career changes. As we recognize research finding and policy implication, but it still lack of impactful research innovation to aging issues. These challenges can no longer be handled separately as in the past, but require integration of ideas, human resources, and coordination to comprehensively tackle the challenges of population aging and improve older persons' quality of life. Need more aging research innovation derived from interdisciplinary approach and multi-stage life, or as Dr. Lintaro mentioned earlier, life cycle perspectives. Such research innovation would help better understand the underlying cause and consequence of sustainable aging, and their implication on the future trends can help us to identify who is vulnerable to what and identify more effective policy and intervention. Future research should not concentrate merely on producing academic papers or expanding knowledge. It should focus on how to connect knowledge and research findings to concrete policy development and implementation. Currently, Chulalongkorn University attempts to build a platform on aging research innovation, or Chula ARI. The mission of Chula ARI is to integrate the university or field of study and other relevant government and non-governmental organizations to maximize the benefit of knowledge and to actively develop innovation in response to the age society. Right now, we have about 70 investigators from about 12 faculty and institutes at Chulalongkorn University. The platform is supported by the Chulalongkorn University and universities on impactful research and innovation for population well-being and sustainable development. Therefore, there are three primary outputs during the past 3 years from Chula RE. First is the third national plan for older person, which is the output from policy research. This plan will be implemented as the master plan in response to the aging society between 2022 and 2037, with a 15 years long-term plan. Okay. The second output is the innovative data repository and dashboard on aging population in various dimensions. Since I have a limited time for further detailed information, you can find them from our Chula RE website. The third output from the action research on the area-based or community-based approach is the prototype for holistic system for support healthy, active and productive older person and aging in place in the poor urban community in Bangkok. I think it is important right now that we need to find a good system in response to aging society in the urban context, because we are moving toward more urbanizations. The system is comprised of 5 dimensions: social, health, economic, environmental, and technology and innovation dimensions. The outcome of the Chula RE in line with the Sustainable Development Goal, which commit to leave no one behind, including the relevant to older person well-being, such as no poverty, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, quality of education, especially lifelong learning for older persons. We can still connect with older persons with in our NAI community through online. I mean, to Zoom, the same system as us. Okay, and the same work for an economic growth is also important for older person as well. And in terms of SDG 9, in terms of innovation and infrastructure, this is very important also. And SDG 10, reduce inequalities, and SDG 11, sustainable city and communities. Okay. From our experience, the most crucial factor for impactful research innovation that will be very useful for sustainable development in aging society is the network and commitment of all stakeholders from both public and private sector, as well as civil society. Public mindset and sharing and caring are also crucial factors for sustainable aging. Research innovation need to be able to translate research into actions. It's crucial mechanism to translate research into action is provide rich information for understanding the aging situation and challenge. We can reach and build strong relationship with all stakeholders, especially older person and community leaders, by exchange data and research finding with them. We use participatory approach to integrate all stakeholders to set up a holistic system and action plan based on data and research finding. Then we identify key actors who will implement the plan into action and make the system sustainable. We hope that our output from Chula RE will be lesson learned for other community and others developing country for policy and system formation to support the aging society and promote the well-being of the older person in Thailand and the world community. In sum, dealing with challenges and seeking way forward in the 21st century, we need more impactful research and research innovation to support the societal transformation towards sustainable, equitable, and resilient. Aging research must put more effort into producing actionable knowledge and actionable research findings to assist in creating and promoting policy and public action in accelerating the achieving of sustainable aging and sustainable development goals. Delivering these tasks will require broad and strong engagement and commitment among researchers, academic institutions, funder, policymaker, public sector, private sectors, and civil society at both national and global level. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Vipan. And my personal belief that, like what you said like the research should be helpful for like in the big picture, or how to lead to another, like maybe the action plan or the policies. I am sure that your concern is very useful, and I'm sure that because like the trend of the population is growth, and even though I'm interested in the aging population as well. And for the next section, you can see that how the research lead to the action plan, or lead to the thing that could be helped to increase the economic growth or the elderly well-being and personalities. Let's be moved to the third section. Welcome to the third section on the sustainable aging on the best practice. And we have seen demographic change and leading to changing in development employment patterns, and the age employment is one of the key focus. Therefore, here we have Professor Yuko Shibukawa, who is a professor in the Department of Active Aging in Nagaya University. He graduated a medical school in the Nagaya University and obtained a PhD from that university. His specialty is social epidemiology and the public health. And he led the epidemiological study in Asian countries, such as Myanmar, Malaysia, and also come along with Mr. Fujinami Yuma. He is the Director General of the Japan Agency for Gerontological Evaluation Studies. His specialty in human resource development and project management. He has an experience as the expert of JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency in Indonesia, and leading the organization management of the JH as the Director General, to share a talk on the age of employment in the super aging populations. Professor Yuko and Mr. Yuma, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chande Sawanate. We are very pleased to share our experience in Japan on the prevention of the long-term care. Sorry, my presentation material is not goes well. So first of all, I would like to explain briefly about the JGs. Actually, when we call JGs, there are two meanings. One is the name of the organization, and
sorry, Mr. Yuma, could you make like the big screen? Oh,
I'm sorry, but this slide goes fast by themselves, so I'm
okay, better.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, first of all, I would like to explain briefly about the JGs. And when we call JGs, there are two meanings. One is the name of the organization, and the other one is the name of the study project, Japan Gerontological Evaluation Study. And today, I would like to show several evidence regarding the prevention of the long-term care. And this evidence was provided by the researchers who joined this evaluation study. And the JG study is population-based longitudinal study and focused on social determinants of older adults' health. And because one of the aim of this study project is to provide evidence which contribute to the development of the measurement for the long-term care prevention. So this survey is conducted in collaboration with the municipality, and survey data linked with the governmental databases. So this survey is conducted every 3 years, and the last one was conducted in 2019. 63 municipalities participated, and we collected more than 250,000 data. And so a lot of researchers from almost 100 universities and
Mr.
institutes.
Yuma?
Yes. Yes. Hello. Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
I can.
Yes, okay. So, a lot of researchers are using this data and providing evidence, and those evidence show the importance of the social participation for the long-term care prevention. This is one of the evidence which is provided by the researchers, and this figure showed the comparison between the older persons who participated in social activities and those who did not participate in social activities. And this is a ratio of the death and survival with the need for long-term care. And this figure showed the older persons who participated in social activities, the ratio of the death and survival with the need for LTC less than those older persons who did not participate in social activities. And next one is another example of the importance of the social participation. This is a comparison between the older persons who participated in the hobby and sports groups and those who did not participate in those group activities. And this figure showed that the older person who participate in those activities one or more times per week, the cost of the long-term care is lower than those who never participate in those activities. And the differences during 11 years was 300,000 to 600,000 yen. So there are a lot of another evidence which show the importance of the social participation for the long-term care prevention. So we are discussing with the municipality to introduce the measurement to facilitate and encourage the social participation. And as you know, Japan is one of the most aged society, and these days a lot of older persons continue working. So we now are conducting the analysis related to the working, and this figure showed that showed the comparison between the older person who do work or do social participation to those who did not work or participate in social activities. And both in rural and city areas, those who keep work after 65 years, the risk of functional decline is lower than those who did not work after 65 years. So as I showed, the social participation is very important for the prevention of the long-term care, as well as the working employment is also very important for the long-term care prevention. And regarding the climate change, it is a concern the number of the natural disaster will increase. And actually, this is not a natural disaster caused by the climate change, but I think this can provide any hints to mitigate the effect of the disaster. About 10 years ago, there was a very big earthquake and tsunami in northern part of Japan, and one of the municipality which participate in our survey was located in the affected area. So we could get the data before and after disaster, and we could analyze those data. And this is one of the result of the analysis. And this is a comparison between the older person who developed the good relationship with neighbors before a disaster and those who did not develop good relationship before disaster. And this shows the risk of depression onset after the disaster, and the older person who developed a good relationship before disaster, the risk of the depression after disaster is lower than those who did not developing the relationship with the neighborhood. So this showed that before disaster, they develop good relationship with the neighbor may mitigate the effect of the disaster. And even he or she didn't develop good relationship with neighbors before disaster, but after disaster, if they can develop a good relationship with neighbors, the risk of the depressive symptoms can be reduced. So even among older persons who did not have neighborhood relationships before disaster, developing good relationships may reduce the health risk that arise from a disaster. So even usually the developing a good relationship with neighbors or participating in social activities or working is important key factor to prevent the long-term care. And even after disaster, relationship or social participation can mitigate the effect of the disaster. So because, as I said, because we collaborate with the municipality and develop the longitudinal database focused on the social factors, we could find a lot of evidence for the prevention of the long-term care. And as you know, in Asian countries also now the population is aging. So we would like to extend this approach to the Asian countries. And actually we have already started the survey in Myanmar and Malaysia. So now I would like to introduce Professor Shobugawa Yugo, who is a leader of the survey in Myanmar and Malaysia, and show his result of the survey. Professor Shobugawa, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fujinami. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to be here. Really, I'm glad to talk about age of employment in Myanmar today. And thank you very much for all your attention. I will share my presentation. Okay, I'm going to talk about age of employment in Myanmar. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Fujinami introduced already. Based on the J-AGES approach, which is nationwide survey in Japan, we extend to Asian country, and already we've conducted the survey in Myanmar and Malaysia. In total, 2,400 older people surveyed. And today, I'm going to show some result of the research from the Myanmar. In Myanmar, 1,000 and 200 older adult, 60 years old or above, aged population was surveyed at the baseline in September to December 2018, 3 years ago. From half, which means 600 from urban area, which is Yangon area, and 600 from rural area, which is Bago area. And we've followed them up by telephone survey because now in Myanmar, military coup happened in February this year. Then we are now continuing to follow them up by telephone. And also in Malaysia, we've conducted the survey, but I'm not showing this result. And also this year, we extend to the other part of Malaysia, Sabah state in Malaysia. Here is in short, today I'm focusing on occupational issue. Here is occupational characteristics in Myanmar at baseline. Occupation means type of occupation which taken the longest in their life. Some retired, some continued to work. And we classify this kind of things: professional, technical, managerial, clerical, sales service, skilled labor, agriculture, blah, blah, blah. And left-hand side, you can see from Yangon people, urban, and male and female, and Bago, rural area, male and female. And you can notice immediately in Yangon area, kind of various occupation were shown. For example, in Yangon, male and female, sales, service, and also skilled labor in male Yangon. And then in Yangon female, they never had a job, as 20.4%. In other hand, in Bago area, male and female mainly worked as a farmer or fisher, like 80% in male and 70% in female. This is very different between rural and urban. And then we follow them up. And here is a Kaplan-Meier survival estimate by area and sex. You can see among the 1,200 participants, 93 deaths for 2-3 years during follow-up period, 7.8%. And average follow-up period was 793 days. And you can see these are female in Yangon, female in Bago, male in Yangon, male in Bago. Bago is rural area. Male died earlier than female, and people in rural died earlier than those who in urban. How about the difference between occupation? Here's a survival estimate by occupation. Sex and educational attainment and also age were adjusted in this analysis. You can see, for example, skilled labor died earlier, agriculture also, but for this short period, not significant difference between occupation among this occupation. This is a result. And also we've obtained many results from the longitudinal survey in Myanmar. For example, this is the social determinants of mortality in the participant. And sorry, this is a very busy slide, busy image. But for example, rich person, rich characteristics, and person who participated in religious group and meeting, and who meet friend once a week or more, and receive some social support, were a protective effect on the mortality in Myanmar. Okay, this kind of result were shown. I've shown very part of the result, but in summary, here, employment status and kind of occupation were varied by sex and place of residence, and kind of occupation seems to be associated with mortality, but not statistically significant due to very short period, follow-up period. Socioeconomic status and social environment, such as meeting friend or social support, were associated with mortality significantly. And further detailed analysis is needed to elucidate determinants of health. And I would like to say this kind of things, statistical analysis also can be performed by based on the data. And in advance, we need to obtain data in proper method. I think we can learn about such method from the university person, and also in Japan, Mr. Fujinami also already mentioned, we've we have experience to obtain such things related with active aging. So yes, in Myanmar and Malaysia, we did do that, but ongoing. So please keep in touch with us, and we will support, and we go together for the active aging in Asian country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you very much, Professor. One is that is the most interesting that I got from your presentation is about like the people in the rural die earlier than the urban area. It could be that because of involving with the digital technologies or the healthcare is more effective. That could be the question that we have to find out. So the next presenter could be the one who could answer this very well. Besides the could be notation, let's look forward for the well-being in the elderly. And we have Dr. Nath Phongsamuth. She is the aged care specialist, developer of Swang Kanives, Home for Aged, Red Cross Society, and the director of LiveWell Senior Living Operator to share the expertise on the aging, well-being, and services. Dr. Nath Phongsamuth, please, over to you.
Thank you. Sawadee ka. Can I have my slide, please?
Yes. 1 second. I'm sorry. Oops. Something missing. Let me, I'm sorry. Give me 1 moment.
So I try to share my screen from here.
Can
I?
Yes, if you can. I'm sorry about that. Oh, I got it. Are you want to do it, or you want me to do it?
Please get back to you. Okay, can I see my slide, please?
Yeah, 1 second. Oops. Uh-oh. Here you go.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you here. As wellness paradigm is replacing medical paradigm in this aging world. Preventive care and health promotion is being promoted in seniors with the aim for them to stay independent as long as possible and stay dependent as short as possible at the end of the life course. Here we have an example of senior wellness community, which is Naya Residence at Riverine Village, Nonthaburi, Thailand, operated by LiveWell Senior Living Operator. Next slide, please. Yes, we may see that Bangkok senior population is enlarging and expanding rapidly. And we have, senior living alone or senior living by themselves in couples without children. And we all aware that, loneliness is the disease of the age. That's why we come up with an idea at Riverine Village as Naya Residence to promote the quality of life for the Bangkok seniors. Next, please. Our idea is to, as the concept of wellness is to elongate the ADL spectrum so that we can keep all the seniors to be independent as long as possible. They can keep their ADL's activities. They can look for themselves, take care of themselves well. This is what we call quality of life for the senior. Next, please. So here at Naya Residence, we are part of a complex called Riverine Village, which is an established community in Nonthaburi. Here we have, 2 freehold condominiums where residents are already aged. 50% of the residents are 50 years old or more. And then we have 1 building that we are converting into senior living, independent living, and assisted living. Here, the concept is to, provide quality of life and wellness services to the seniors living in this community with the large central facilities like swimming pool, garden, and walking track. So all kind of things. Here at LiveWell, we are promoting the use of this hardware and also the software like services to them. Next slide, please. Here we modify the hardware of the central facilities to suit all the use of the seniors by using the concept of universal design. We put up the walking track, and then we put up all the exercise, which is exercise equipment, which is suitable for the seniors. And also with a large size of a swimming pool, we promote aqua exercise among the seniors using aqua bikes and other activities inside of the pools, which we found that helps a lot with the quality of the health of the seniors doing exercise in the pool. Next, please. And here you will see we promote, LiveWell Fit. We have, 24-hour nurse available on site, registered nurse. We also have the service from our physiotherapist for, providing services to the elderly and designing all the activities for the seniors. Apart from care, we have a club which provide, the social activities for the seniors. And then they would have, as I mentioned before, loneliness is the disease of the age. Here, the seniors who are living here, they join activities, they have friends, and then they can come up with activities and some handicraft together. And then the last one is fit. As I mentioned before, we provide, for them to stay strong. So because we are aware that sarcopenia or the loss of muscle is a pain for the elderly because they cannot have good balance, which will result in fall and other diseases. That's why we have exercises to promote the muscle strength and balance among the elderly. Next, please. And also, we are aware that nutrition is very important. We provide nutritional program with the work with the nutritionists to provide a good, dishes for the elderly. And also, we provide transportation and all sort of physical exercise and physical therapies to them as well. Next, please. We are also aware that using technology will help us to deliver more service to the elderly instead of using human services. So using technology, we work with SCG, Do Care, Protect, using all the equipment putting in the rooms and in the common facilities to monitor the well-being of the elderly, as well as in case of accidents or emergencies, we can provide, help of emergency treatment or and referral within 4 minutes when they need help. And also information from the technology, we can get, all kind of vital data, vital signs like BPs or blood pressure, blood sugar, and oxygen saturation from, right in their units or in their rooms. And then the data will be transported or sent to our dashboard or our system for our healthcare worker to monitor. And then we will work with the doctors that the elderly are seeing at hospitals, that, you know, during the time of during the visit, we will monitor all the behaviors and all the medication and all the vital signs to work with the doctors. And also for accident, as I mentioned, you know, when the elderly falls or need help, they would, you know, the system would be triggered, and then our nurse who is on site would be informed, and then we would, you know, reach our elderly within 4 minutes from the trigger point, and then we will perform CPR, first aid treatment, and then we do the referral system. So the ongoing process of development of the system with using the technology we are doing with SCG would be ongoing process, and then you know, more functions will be put in. Next, please. And then here the KPI. What we are delivering now is the quality of life of the elderly. So our KPI is to maintain the ADLs of the elderly. They would remain independent. And then, you know, when they have good balance, they would reduce the fall risk, and then they would remain independent in the long run. And then, and also for the social engagement, you know, they wouldn't stay, you know, or remain alone. They would be engaged with, you know, functions and social activities to keep, you know, their body and also mental to be active most of the time. Next, please. And here's the result. You know, after 2 years of our activities at Riverine Village, we achieved our goal of promoting the independence of our residents, or our elderly, by, you know, getting them engaged in our activities, getting our healthcare team to, you know, get in touch and support them with all the health information and other activities like, you know, accumulating steps within 1 month competition for them to stay active all the time. Next, please. And then we work, as I mentioned, that our strategic partner here is SCG. So in terms of senior care and senior wellness in the future, we see that using technology will help us to deliver more services and quality to the elderly who are our customers. Next, please. So that's it for the project at Riverine Village called Naya Residence. This project is going to be officially launched maybe in November, early November this year. And we would like to welcome you guys to visit our sites and then to experience the services, our wellness services for the elderly, with the aim to promote healthy aging and successful aging at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naat. And I think your project is a kind of like already answered the question of like why the people who live in the urban live longer than the rural. And it's back to the thing that Professor Wipan mentioned about like the research could make to the action plan or the policy. I think this one is already beyond the action plan or the policy, but it's already the thing that could be exist and could be that like that very helpful and it's like touchable and could be real. So the people live longer, life expectancy, that could be more choice on living lifestyles. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last but not least, let's hear something about like the case, not the case, but could be another successful case in Singapore. And in the course of the chronic illness and the mental health issue as among the most pressing healthcare challenges in our generation. And this is the only globe with a rapidly aging population across almost all the urban settings. Super aging societies such as Japan and soon Singapore are racing to contain rising healthcare and welfare expenditures. More and more is poured into the sector. Is this sustainable? Is there a rule that environmental sustainability design play the healthy aging? It's possible that willingness to take personal responsibility for self-care is a complementary strategy. Please welcome Ms. Lilian, the co-founder and managing director of TCU Healthcare Singapore. She is responsible for strategic and corporation development, marketing, and operations. Lilian and her team at TCU are pushing the boundary on the elder care technologies and care management. And she got management and other applications. The team was honored with the HIMSS Asia Pacific Excellence in Startup Innovation Award in 2017, Innovation of Year Technology Award at the 8th Elder Care Innovation Award 2020, and the Grand Prize winner for 2021 Healthy Aging Prize for Aging Innovation, HAPI. Luckily, Mr. Wisman will give us a talk on environment, aging, and personal responsibility. Over to you.
Thank you, Khun Che. Thank you. So sorry that I've given you such a long introduction. I thought you would summarize it. But anyway, thank you very much for having me.
It's like a good thing to know.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for having me here. My name is Lilian. I'm from Tetsuya Healthcare. So a very warm hello from Singapore. I love Thailand, and even though we cannot travel during this COVID period, I'm just really glad that I'm able to still hear the nice Thai accent, on a Friday afternoon. Okay, let me share screen.
Okay.
You can see my screen? Okay.
It's coming. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Okay, so Khun Che actually asked me to share something about Singapore, and I thought rather than to go very deep, and have hard topics around, let's say, technology or even research, I just wanted to share a little bit of a hybrid between what is happening from my perspective, when I deal with the business of aging from a technology perspective, and also what I am perceiving at a personal level about how the environment, especially in terms of how Singapore basically has created an environment which, in my opinion, could be a small lesson to learn in terms of how we can, over time, take personal responsibility and be motivated to take personal responsibility for healthy aging. So a little bit about our organization. I think Khun Che has done a very good job reading out what I've given to him. But I just wanted to note that we are a Singapore health tech company. A lot of our applications really is targeted and in health and community care sector, obviously targeting a lot of the aged care facilities. And this company was actually co-founded by Dr. Shinsuke Muto, a Japanese cardiologist and a home care specialist, and myself. I was actually previously from banking. So from a aging perspective, I think I'm one of the examples of people who have actually found I won't say mid-career switch, but more like an aged career switch, whereby I have now kind of pivoted into something completely differently from the first half of my life, right? So hopefully that also gives me a little bit of credibility, right, to talk about this topic. So some key themes that I wanted to just share. I think some of the speakers today have already given us very, very deep insights in terms of what really is happening around the world from the aged care perspective, on aging perspective. So I will just kind of like very quickly skim through some of those issues around chronic disease, mental health, right, in a rapidly aging society. And of course, kind of maybe summarize some of the points that the other speakers have made in terms of the key challenges that aging societies are facing today. And I want to touch a little bit on how environment, right, not just in terms of the sustainability component of it, but really our environment, our world, our globe, and how that actually has a small role to play in healthy aging. And because I'm from Singapore, I thought it would be good to also kind of bring in the perspective of how I perceive Singapore has done it and has done it well. And obviously back to the work that I do see technology as an important ecosystem enabler in this sustainability or sustainable aging kind of a discussion. And very lastly, I would kind of wrap up with how personal motivations and responsibility actually plays a very large role in how we age and how societies basically can age better. Okay, so, Singapore, obviously, like, what some of our Thai friends have shared earlier on, is fast becoming a super aged society. We are a small country, right? But all the more compounded by the fact that we do not have a very big core population. About 1/5 of our population are actually foreigners. So actually, even though we see about 5.5 million people in Singapore, the core population is probably around 4 million, right? And that population itself, the core birth rates are actually dropping year by year. So which means that our population really is declining. And of course, 1 in 5 people today are already aged 65 and above. So this number is going to become 1 in 4, 1 in 3 in the next 20 years. And of course, this is again juxtaposed with the fact that people are living longer, right? So even as recent as today, we are looking at women, living way above 80-something years old, and men, trailing not far behind. So with longevity, right, which traditionally has been seen to be a blessing, I think it's come alongside that with some issues, some challenges as well. And honestly, when you are retiring at, let's say, 60-something years old, to live into your 80s, to live into your 90s is good 1/3 of your life. What do you do with it? How do you spend it, right? And how do you make meaning and purpose out of it? I think those are real challenges, right, that modern society, modern people need to deal with. Not just for ourselves, but the people around us, especially our children and our children's children. So I don't need to repeat that, but the reality is that aging is actually one of the greatest risk factor for chronic disease. And in a society like Singapore, whereby healthcare is not free, right? Healthcare is actually not free. We are seeing the cost of disease manifest not just in terms of the physical pain and suffering, but really, a huge, financial cost to society and to the individual as well and to their families. So when you couple that with the loss of income, that can actually cause severe financial hardship. So as you can see, the cost of some of the chronic diseases, including cancer, can be mind-boggling, right? When we talk about Singapore dollars, right, spending $100,000 to $200,000 yearly on cancer treatment is a very, very big number. And even though some of these treatments are insurable, we are still talking about a lot of out-of-pocket, which actually could be huge financial hardship to the families of those, right? Especially for those who are breadwinners, who are suffering from this disease. So public C, basically the Ward C, is the, I would say, the highest subsidy level that we can actually get in a public hospital in Singapore. And the median bill per visit, which means a stay of about 5-6 days, is about 4,000 Singapore dollars. So that is actually not a small number, right? Maybe some, and that's actually already net, right? That's already net of some of the subsidies that we get. So this is, a huge amount, right, for the individual, and including subsidies, that's also a very huge impact on society. And I think as Singapore kind of evolves its healthcare, insurance, its healthcare cost system, there's a lot of this kind of changes and evolution and protocols that needs to come in place in terms of managing some of these chronic diseases. So globally, I think, we are also witnessing, and I think some of the speakers have shared as well, that not just chronic diseases as we know it to be, but also mental health that's becoming increasingly a challenge, right, to aging societies. So in the world today, about maybe 1 in 6, 1 in 7 people are above the age of 60 years old. But in about 30 years' time, we're talking about 1 in 5, which is a very big number. And actually 1 in 5 people, in fact, more than 1 in 5 people are already suffering from mental or neurological disorder. And often because of the stigma associated with that, actually this is highly undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, and undertreated. And of course, some of the big highlights would be around depression, and of course, dementia as well. And I think some of the speakers have already alluded to how depression is actually one of the big challenges that we are facing in today's aged society. So the big question really is why, right? And I think all of us who are in the aging space and ourselves, in the process of aging, will be able to relate to that. So why is it so easy or so prone for older people to get depression or to get some form of a mental or neurological disorder? Illness is obviously one very clear reason, right? Certain diseases, vascular diseases, neurological diseases naturally lead to some of these mental problems. But of course, physical pain could also be a very good reason for people feeling a sense of helplessness, a sense of hopelessness, right? And that definitely will lead to a lot of this mental diseases that we know it to be. And the second, of course, is this sense of loss, right? Right. Many of us actually, as we old, actually feel this sense of loss, loss of our maybe beauty, loss of our physical function, right? People who used to be able to run, used to be able to squat, suddenly feel that I can't do this anymore. What's wrong with me, right? And of course, loss of loved ones. As we grow older, our parents pass on, our friends around us actually pass on. And of course, one important thing is the loss of social status. What is actually sometimes not commonly spoken about is when a person retires, the way in which society views them is completely changed. And that's also one of the reasons why in Japan, some people would have also talked about it earlier on about how people actually continue to pretend that they're still working so that people would see them as a meaningful contributor of society, right? But these are actually real reasons why people could lapse into this inner spiral of wondering, what's wrong with me? What do I actually contribute to society? What do I now bring to the table now that I'm no longer able to function like before? How do people view me, right? And that is actually contributing to a sense of helplessness, hopelessness. And all this, together with all the physical construct that we talked about, is also leading to, for example, certain immobility, leading to isolation, and of course, what we spoke about earlier on, loneliness. So all these are contributors which are very, very real. And as we talk about how we are going to live longer, right? This period of our lives whereby we will continue to feel pain, we'll continue to feel a loss of function, we'll continue to actually feel this, helplessness and hopelessness. How do we avoid this whole isolation and loneliness? How do we build that ability in ourselves to cope, the resilience, right? To be able to manage this, not just for the people around us, but honestly also for ourselves, right? Also for ourselves. So I think, many of the speakers earlier on have already alluded, to what are some of the challenges that all aging societies will face. I think funding is one very key piece, not just from a governmental perspective, but personally, right? If people 20 years ago lived to 70, and they finish work at 55, retire at 55, to lead a retirement of 15 years, definitely is something that may be doable. But for someone who is going to live to 90, 100, how are we going to be able to finance that 30, 40 years? How are we going to be able to find a facility in Kunats, village, right? To be able to finance the cost of actually living in a facility like that. So I think those are very real issues. How do we find enough people, young people, right? Who's going to be caring for us? And thirdly, of course, it's, from a society perspective, from a governmental perspective, how do we shape healthcare and social policies to target some of these real issues that will unfold before us? And the topic that I wanted to talk a little bit more is actually item 4 and 5, a little bit in terms of the environments and the ecosystem, right? That could help shape, what this sustainable aging could look like. And I took technology as one of those examples because that's a little bit closer to my heart. And lastly, perhaps to finish off, maybe just talk a little bit in terms of how do we find that personal motivation, the meaning and purpose for sustainable aging. So this is a nice picture. I mean, I love this picture because it really kind of encapsulates, how I want to spend, a Friday evening or Friday morning, right? Really just walking, being, with myself, being with nature, right? And I think a lot of research has already shown that actually a walk in the woods, being in touch with nature does help our body and our soul, right? And in this article, it talks about microbial diversity. It talks about, the ecosystem, nature really as a service provider, right? And I thought that was an amazing revelation, because we always talk about service providers as people, as companies. But I think this is an interesting concept because we are talking about nature, the environment, the world that God has made really as a service provider to us, right? Whereby we can be one with nature, whereby ecology, medicine, and the human race actually coexist. And that actually is an important pivot to what we talk about from a sustainability perspective. If you talk about paper bags, for example, if you talk about, recycling, for example, sometimes that seems a little bit far-fetched, a little bit removed from who we are as a person. But when you talk about nature, when you talk about the environment, and how that actually is an ecosystem to us, that gives us perspective in terms of why it's important, right? To protect our world, to protect our society, to protect our environment. And I think I wanted to just, bring a little bit of context from a Singapore perspective. We are a small country, we are urban society, we are so built up, but I'm incredibly proud of how, we have really transformed, our government basically has really done an excellent job to allow, the urban environment to coexist with nature, to really, I would say, reset, right? What town planning means by inviting nature, right, into the world that we live in, right? And I think these are some beautiful pictures where, many of us really get to enjoy every day when we go for our walks, when we go for an evening, Zumba in the park, when we talk about, really just maybe even walking from the train station to our homes. So this is the kind of environment that we have really the luxury of living in. And I feel that, this is really one of those environmental examples that also helps promotes this motivation as individuals, as personal, to take personal responsibility, to want to actually get healthier, because the environment really allows for it, right? And I think during this COVID period, we are seeing more and more people, right, taking on this, I would say, this personal journey of understanding and reconnecting, right, with an environment that we call home, right? Prior to COVID, I think many Singaporeans were spending a lot of time traveling, right? And I think with COVID, I personally also find that, I am now reconnecting and actually refinding, right? What is this place that we call home? And the environment, the park connectors, the tens of kilometers of park connectors that the National Park has actually created has allowed us to really do that, right? To really come in touch with this, this nature and this place that, we actually are rediscovering is actually the place that we stay in. And of course, over the last 2 years, it's been really interesting because with COVID, you know, and the lack of travel, we've actually found that, you know, a lot of the natural life, a lot of the biodiversity is rediscovering Singapore, rediscovering, you know, some of these wetlands and even the park connectors itself. So one of my favorite animals here is actually the otters. We don't know where it came from. It probably got, you know, let go by, you know, or roamed out from the zoo. But over the last 2 years, we are seeing more and more of these otters actually coming out of rivers, right? Coming into the park connector. And the joke was that there were actually 2 groups of otters who had a gang fight, right? And, you know, we actually had videos, right? People during the circuit breaker taking videos of the gang fight and, you know, rooting of who to win. And of course, you know, we have seen birds, you know, coming back, you know, the last 2 years, where we actually thought they were extinct or were never actually even recorded as having existed, you know, in Singapore, but they are coming back, right? And even, you know, in park connectors itself, whereby now we actually have to look out for certain reptiles that we've never seen before and let them pass. But joke aside, you know, and I think this is actually helping, right? Reasserting the fact that we can be one with the environment, and it gives us a lot more, I would say a lot more motivation to want to preserve this lovely aspect of what we call nature, what we call the environment. And also this is one way in which we are promoting people to have very, much better, you know, healthy lifestyles, whereby there is an environment whereby, you know, you can just be at one with nature, to exercise, to walk, to actually breathe in the fresh air, to take, you know, that 1 hour screen time away and just really be one with nature. And I think, you know, from an aging perspective, this is a wonderful way, this is a wonderful lesson, I feel, right? You know, whether knowingly or unknowingly, the government has availed, right, to the people of Singapore. And of course, you know, technology, you know, we've spoken about it, you know, it's really, you know, a wonderful enabler that, you know, we talked about isolation, we talked about loneliness. This is actually one way that has brought people together. And I really enjoyed, you know, the little, even though I didn't understand the Thai language, but I enjoyed, you know, the video that was shared earlier on, whereby the older generation can be, right, part of this ecosystem, right, can actually be part of the world, you know, so-called, you know, ecosystem. And in terms of care as well, I think one of the ideas really is how do we then bring this into not just the social environment, the entertainment environment, but also in the area of care, right? So there are many disruptors, right, over the last, I would say, you know, 2 decades. And I think this has been more urgent, a lot more urgent now with COVID. And I think some of our Japanese colleagues, you know, shared earlier on about some of the, you know, transition into more digital types of care. So I think Japan, you know, has done very well from a digitization perspective when it came to the COVID period, because suddenly there was an urgency for many of them to convert. For many years, actually, Japan was a laggard because there was very little motivation for them to move into the digital space for care because of the universal health insurance scheme. They had very, very good healthcare. A lot of it meant person to person, face to face, and very, very well subsidized. So it's almost free. So there was actually no real need for many of these providers to move into digital space. But COVID changed all that, right? COVID changed all that because there was already no opportunity for people to go into, for example, the nursing homes to do the actual care itself, and to wait for a doctor to come to your home, to wait for basically a nurse to come to your home would be very difficult because of these restrictions and the lockdowns. And I think, you know, overnight, there was a rush, right, to bring about some of this digitization. And I think, you know, the first 2 pictures on the left show us, you know, some of the examples, right, that, you know, have given, you know, has a rush or a increase in the telemedicine so-called services that's being available and the adoption. And on the right, you see that actually there's a lot more of this patient-centric empowerment as well, whereby you have a lot more self-care that in the past was not available, but now because of digitization, you know, be it in terms of your parameters, vital signs, you are now able to manage it yourself even for dialysis patients, they can now actually manage a lot of this care themselves. At the bottom, I think Kunat would know, Paro as a robot for dementia care has been around for a long time. But I think with, now with all this isolation, it becomes even more important. And robots, are actually, coming in a very big way as well. So for us in Singapore, and actually, of course, as I mentioned, my partner is also, a very successful home care doctor in Japan. We've actually come together to use AI in the area of wound care as well, right? So this is actually a AI-enabled wound management system that allows nurses to be able to take all the measurements, non-contact. So it's fantastic for preventing infection. So this also allows, let's say, a home nurse to be able to take those photos, do the measurements, do the assessment, and allow maybe nurses, at a let's say remote location such as a hospital, to do all this remote monitoring, right? So for aged care, this is actually a very powerful way in which we have be able to fill that white space during COVID. So we had a pilot with the University of Tokyo. So I thought it's a nice case study to just show that the challenge during COVID period for the aged people in home care that had, let's say, very chronic wounds, was that they were not able to actually get a lot of the ward nurses to visit them, right, because of some of the lockdown and some of the restrictions, and it was just taking a long time for this wound nurses to come in to do a face-to-face visit. So we were able to actually use Cares for Wounds as a way to actually demonstrate the effectiveness, right, of telenursing in this space. So we actually did 12 sites with mobile nurse stations across 12 sites in Japan, including in the north of Japan, Ishinomaki. And of course, the outcomes was actually fantastic because we had the mobile nurses presiding over the wound. And in the picture, you can see that Professor Sanada basically was taking, right, that teleconsultation over in Tokyo, right? And I think, the outcomes was actually, very impressive because the clinical outcomes was efficient, the assessments were precise, and it was definitely convenient, and we could do this remotely. So maybe just, as a sum up, before we kind of move on to this part about personal responsibility, one of the points that I thought was important to bring home was as we age, one of the problems that I would say many people in their 50s and 60s start to sometimes wonder, what's the meaning, right? My children are grown, I'm retired from my work, what's next, right? And I think, finding that moral compass, finding that social compass is one of the reasons for, like we mentioned, the depression and the hopelessness, that we talked about. And in fact, a lot of research has shown that meaning and purpose actually has a very, very positive impact to physical health, right? And in fact, a strong sense of purpose slows down aging, right, and improves longevity. And they've actually shown that when you have a sense of purpose, you walk faster and your grip is actually stronger. So I would say that meaning and purpose, and that personal motivation, together with the ecosystem that we talked about earlier on, be it from an environmental perspective and from a technology perspective, are equally important as we embark on this journey of sustainable aging, right? Whether or not we age well, whether or not we are successful in our aging, some of it is really maybe the draw of the luck, right? Because you're dealt the cards when you're born, genetically, how long you would live, how well your body would be. And of course, there's a luck element, right? But a lot of it is also mindset, right? Do we have a fixed mindset? Do we have a growth mindset? Are we determined? Are we resilient to find a sense of purpose? Do we love ourselves enough, right, to want to actually, live long and live well? What is the lifestyle that we lead, right? What is that purpose that we spoke about? Do we have that relationships around us to motivate us, to encourage us to get to that end point? So I think, you know, when we talk about sustainability from an aging perspective, it is all the above, right? Together with the environment, together with the ecosystem that we talked about, right? And with all this in mind, hopefully, you know, I've shared something of a different dimension, a different paradigm for you, right? And with that, I just leave you with these thoughts, and also wishing you live long and prosper. Thank you very much.
Kun Shantit, sorry, I think you have to unmute.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Ms. Lillian. Singapore is one of the countries that very impressive, successful in the term of like urban planning and very resilient. Singapore has limited resources, but you all have everything. It's like lifestyle, environment, like you have new water. You have the thing that serve the people in the city, in the countries. And like back to Dr. Na said about like the disease, the loneliness disease, and you mentioned about like the mental, that is a key factor of like that have to do with a like aging population. And back to the first person at the keynote speech of Professor Wintero about like the vulnerability is not about like the one who missing thing or something, but it's about like the structures. But if you put up the mindset of personality on that, or like looking toward on something like back to yourself, it could be like the way to make the aging sustainability. Thank you very much. And I think we still have some time for a few questions to the floor. Anyone who has any questions?
I think if not, can you please visit the chat box? Maybe some participant there ask the question to maybe some keynote speaker.
So which question is gonna go first?
Actually, the first question we got it from Kun Pichet Moonpar from WWF, but I'm not so sure that I think he want to ask maybe representative from the UK embassy, because he want to ask about the NDC viewpoint. So, but I'm not so sure that Andrew stay with here right now or not.
And if the question goes to like Mr. Andrew, I would like to say sorry for him because he has the meeting with the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs. So that question should be like, keep in mind, and we're gonna get back to you later, Mr. Pichet. So let me move to another questions like,
the second is my question, but anyway, I think Professor let me know the answer already, because I want to know about the how to foster the literacy for the elderly in the Japanese society. But anyway, in the chat box, maybe the speaker, she gave me very valuable comment and respond to that.
Okay, so like back to your question to the chat box, may I add a little more on about like the literacy or the digital? It seemed like Dr. Nat, Ms. Lillian, everyone talking about like the technology and innovations. Like, you think like in the 21st century, knowing or not knowing the technology is a must, or like how like is it very helpful, or it's like it could be one of the key that you have to be pursued? And even to deeper, so like, and back to Professor Vipan too, it's like the SDG 17 is like the collaboration. It's like the 21st century aging is not only the one that like we getting old, but we have to know on the technology, even in the healthcare or even in the services. You think like if no technologies, can we leave aging sustainable?
Do you want to ask someone, right? Can you pinpoint to the key speaker in which country, in which context, or so? Yeah, I'm not so sure who's gonna answer your question.
Okay. Let me ask to Dr. Nat. about like the live well or about like the community that we've been created. If technology is like one of the key that we have to be involved or use or rely on, how important it is.
I think the seniors in the future should have, computer literacy or digital literacy. I don't have problem with the population tsunami of Thailand. Those big chunk of population who are getting into retirement 20 beginning next year and going on for 20 years from now, for they are very accustomed to the use of technology. But for the older ones, I think they need to be, to be trained, and also it is our job, and also with the government as well, for us to make the population of Thailand be, digital literacy. Yes, it's very important. Like, during this COVID time, when you have to transfer money into the digital pocket of the elderly, they have got problems, lots of problems, So I think we are all aware that, they need to be able to operate those kind of technology.
Okay, thank you very much. And I still have one more question for Ms. Kasama. Are you still here? Let me. Kun Kasama. Okay, maybe not.
Maybe not here.
Okay, so like.
Kun
Next
Chantika,
question.
anyway, another question to Professor Vipan about the chat box. Can you
Okay.
repeat it or record the question in the chat box to Ajahn Vipan?
Yeah, let me. Which question? I'm sorry.
About the
computer is-
pension system in the rural population. So yeah, maybe she wants to know that is the pension system for the both people in Thailand, especially the rural population in our country.
Hold on, I got something wrong with my chat box. Like,
Okay, I can help you actually.
oh yes, please.
Yes. Okay. Yes, actually, for the people in the rural area, they are most of them are work in informal sector, right? They work in agriculture, so they don't really have. They have no pension because the pensions actually cover for only for the government officers or the civil servants. Okay. And but anyway, Thai government did try very hard to help those people. So we have something called monthly allowance, which is about 600 to 900 baht per month, depend on their age. This is like a universal basic pension for all Thais right now. So although it's not much in terms of the amount, but for our study, we find that it's 600 to 900 baht, very helpful for older person during the COVID outbreak this time, and not only help the older person, but help the whole family, because right now some of the family member already lost that job. So the monthly allowance becomes something that can help them survive. Yeah. So I think that this is the minimum one that we have right now. And right now the government try to develop other pension scheme as well. And we think about not only the government support, but people should try to help themselves by saving for themselves in the old age also. But we just start to develop this pension system. So yeah, it takes some time. Please wait anyway, but at least for the poor, we have something to help them. Okay.
Thank you very much. So, Professor Sutirat?
Yes. Thank you
you want
once
to go?
again, Ajahn Vipan, for your kind answer to someone because the question is not from mine. But anyway, I'm not so sure that they are still with us or not. Yeah, thank you for your clarification on that. So if not, please allow me to ask Ajahn Vipan more about the key question, because you mentioned about the research on the aging population in our university, and you mentioned about some kinds of the key contribution of the SDGs, maybe Sustainable Development Goals. Can you say a little bit about the key challenges in terms of the integration of each SDG in this particular topic? What are or what is the key challenges? And what is the how to link together about the key research and also transfer to the actual action, because you say that the translation between the R&D and to the actual action is very important. So I think it is important for us to learn from you as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that the most important one is that the community need to understand the situation and try to help themselves. Because right now, like in Thailand, we are developing countries with financial resources. I think if we rely only on the government budget or the government services, we cannot serve a very speedy, rapid population aging, right? But I think that one way to help is that each people has to help themselves, that more people has to rely on themselves, or their family and the community need to support them as well too, because right now we know that most of Thai now have very few number of children, right? And the younger generation tend to have very few number of children. So we cannot rely on children like in the past, and we cannot rely on the government. So I think the community-based system is very important. So we should try to strengthen the community system, because we still have community in Thailand. So many countries now looking back to the community, because the government may not be able to support everything, and some project become use a lot of money, right? Even from developed country, they face a problem as well. So I think that for Thai right now, we try to use area-based approach and use the research finding to support how to strengthen community to support older person, especially urban poor. We try to reduce inequality as well. Yeah.
Yes, I thank you for your clarification and very useful information to our country context. But anyway, I think this is important point. And I think we, the Kingdom of Thailand, I think we can learn from maybe, let's say, Singapore, or we can learn from Japan as well about this kinds of the way to strengthen, increase or enhance about the engagement of the community. So yeah, maybe this is some kinds of the open question if someone want to share about the situation in your country.
So I think it's about time to wrap up.
I'm not so sure. Maybe any quick question, just a few quick questions from the audience or from the student, professor, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe no. Okay, so what the next Kunchantit? So you want to do the wrap up?
Yeah, it's already 3:55.
Okay, so in order to keep it on time, I think I should be the one to do the wrap up for the discussion, right? And yeah, maybe for sure, as Kunchantit mentioned, I don't want to take it for the longer time for my wrap up. Anyway, I have a few slides to share you during this time. So did you see my screen right now?
It's coming.
Yes, I think you see my screen already. And yeah, maybe this is some kinds of the key wrap up from the discussion that I listened from the first to the last valuable keynote speaker. And yeah, for the keyword that I try to combine, that I try to listen regarding to the challenges or all kinds of the way forward to moving sustainable aging. Actually, there are too many keywords that I have ever heard about your presentation. Once I think we have to focus about the situation itself. We could not avoid about the aging society or super aging society in some day. And professor always mentioned about some kinds of the life cycle assessment or the multi-stage life of the elderly population. This is a really important thing. But anyway, once we talk about this current century, we also have to think about all threats maybe coming to our society. For the first is about the environmental threat, for climate change, for the impact of the climate state and so on. And this current year is about the pandemic impact to everyone, not just only for the elderly, but maybe for everyone in our world. And for the next section is about the key terms of the technology perception, the digital literacy, the quality of life, well-being of the elderly, and also a sense of the preparedness should be also one important idea that we can move to the sustainable aging population. Last but not least is about the connectivity. Some professor mentioned about some kinds of the social participation or the connectivity among the group of the elderly population. So in short, I want to wrap up. This is the all challenges that we have. But anyway, we have to think about the contribution from us, from our society. As Ajahn Vipan mentioned, community engagement is also one thing that can the potential solution. I think this is some kind of 1 minute wrap up. But anyway, I try to wrap up some each speaker. Maybe I don't want to take it more long. Maybe I wrap up the to this kinds of presentation already. Yeah, maybe this one. Everything we can share really key point, and in somewhere maybe we can send you via email. Yeah. That's it, Kun Chantit. Yeah, this is some kinds of key information that I can learn from the audience today. Yeah, thank you once again for coming. And last but not least, I'm really happy to hear all professor here. And once we want to call for the aging society, not just for the elderly, but if we can cope this situation, I think we can do for us, we can do for everyone, and we can enhance the sustainability of our global society. So that's it from my part right now, Kun Chantit. Thank you once again for giving me a chance to wrap up the key discussion from this all speaker.
Thank you very much for the concrete wrap up. That is like almost hit every single like detail or like thing that all the professor and thing that we have been shared. Thank you very much for coming and join us today. I'm sure that your talk and your expertise will lead us in the good direction about like how to sustainable aging. And maybe it's not big like finished in a couple of years, but if we start it now, we can live it and we can look it forward. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much. So on the behalf of that, I would like to say goodbye and close for the meeting.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Once again, can I say the last
afternoon.
minute of our talk? Maybe
Sure.
today is the first day, but not the last day for everything. I think for the network of the aging, that we can do something for the aging population, we can start up from today. So maybe Kun Chantit can be the one who are the center of this research of our program. And Jula Ali as Professor Vipan, she is really expert and keen on that particular field. So if you want to gather together to do something for elderly, so please call us anytime, whenever you want. Yeah, have a nice day. And also stay safe during this COVID situation. Yes, yeah, thank you very much once again. Bye-bye.
สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ